Your nose isn't just something you see in the mirror every morning. It's not simply an aesthetic detail, and it's definitely not a genetic design flaw. The truth is, your nose breathes differently from other people's. Air enters in its own way, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, sometimes better warmed, sometimes more thoroughly filtered. And chances are, no one ever explained why. We're used to judging noses through beauty trends, what's considered balanced, ideal, or attractive at the moment. But evolution never cared about trends. It cared about one thing only: survival. Every nose shape is an answer to the environment humans once faced, to climate, to air quality, to the conditions your ancestors breathed in every single day. In this video, we're not going to talk about which noses look better or worse. We're going to talk about what different noses were built to do. From extreme cold to humid heat, from dry, dusty air to stable, mild climates. When you understand that, the way you see your own face starts to change. Because your face isn't random. It's a survival map, and the nose you carry is one of the clearest traces evolution left behind. Upturned nose, built for cold air. If your nose is short, slightly upturned, and your face often looks younger than your age, you may have thought of it as purely aesthetic, something cute, soft, not particularly meaningful from a biological standpoint. But evolution doesn't create useless details. With an upturned nose, air enters more quickly thanks to a shorter nasal passage with fewer twists and turns. Less resistance means breathing is processed more efficiently, especially in cold, dry environments. Before reaching the lungs, the air is warmed and humidified just enough to prevent irritation of the respiratory tract. For ancestors who lived in temperate and cold regions like Northern Europe, this was a clear survival advantage. In low temperatures, each breath needed to be fast, but not at the cost of losing body heat. The upturned nose does exactly that, functioning like a built-in scarf, subtle but always working. Because of its compact, open structure, this nose type helps maintain steady breathing without forcing the body to spend extra energy conditioning the air. It doesn't need to stand out to prove its value. Socially, an upturned nose is often perceived as youthful and approachable, but behind that impression is a high-performance biological design. Not accidental, not just cute. It's an adaptive solution built for cold climates. Precise, efficient, and purposeful. Flat nose, adapted for tropical air. If you have a low nasal bridge, a nose that doesn't project much, and relatively wide nostrils, you may have thought of it as simple genetics, or a feature that makes the face look softer. But this shape isn't random. It's a trace of the environment your ancestors had to survive. A flatter nose shortens the distance air must travel before reaching the lungs. In regions with consistently high heat and humidity, there's less need to warm incoming air, and that becomes an advantage. Air flows in quickly, lightly, and with minimal retention, keeping breathing comfortable in prolonged tropical conditions. Wider nostrils support better airflow, helping the body regulate temperature efficiently without increasing breathing rate. At the same time, because the nose doesn't protrude forward, this structure reduces injury risk and limits direct exposure to cold wind during sudden weather shifts. Less projection also means less unnecessary heat loss. In tropical parts of Asia and Oceania, where the climate is stable and humid, a flat nose is a compact, practical solution. Socially, this nose type is often perceived as gentle and balanced, but on a deeper level, it reflects a biological design optimized for energy efficiency and long-term adaptation. Not flashy, just fitting. Nubian nose, a natural cooling system. If your nose has a longer bridge, wider nostrils, and a slightly downward-pointing tip, you may have heard people describe it as prominent or too big. But like every other feature of the body, this shape didn't appear just to stand out. It appeared because it was once necessary. A Nubian nose allows a higher volume of air to flow in. The wider airway helps the body exchange oxygen efficiently while releasing excess heat. In hot, humid environments, where overheating is a constant threat, this cooling capacity is a real survival advantage. As air moves through a Nubian nose, it also travels more slowly and evenly. That gives nasal hairs and mucous membranes more time to trap dust, bacteria, and fine particles before they reach the lungs. You can think of it as a wide corridor where airflow is dispersed and controlled, rather than rushing straight inside. For ancestors living in tropical regions, this was how the body protected itself from both heat and heavy air. Socially, the Nubian nose is often associated with strength and presence. But biologically, it's simply an air cooling and filtration system refined over thousands of years of adaptation. Button nose. Small, but precise. If your nose is small, round, compact, and doesn't take up much space on your face, you've probably heard it described as cute, sweet, or purely aesthetic. But like many traits of the body, small size doesn't mean a small role. A button nose has a moderately short nasal cavity, creating a balance between heat retention and oxygen intake. In mild climates, where temperatures aren't extreme, this structure allows the body to breathe efficiently without needing heavy adjustment. Air flows in quickly enough to maintain a natural breathing rhythm, yet is processed just enough to avoid irritation. That sense of just enough is what makes the button nose a flexible design. It isn't optimized for extreme heat or extreme cold, but it performs reliably across a wide range of conditions. Over time, as populations migrated and mixed, this nose type became more common in parts of Northern and Western Europe. Socially, a button nose is often associated with youthfulness and approachability. But beneath its neat appearance is a respiratory system fine-tuned for energy efficiency and long-term comfort. Not designed to stand out, designed to work smoothly day after day. Round, prominent nose, built to warm and protect. If the tip of your nose is round, full, and more pronounced than the rest, you may have heard people say this type of nose looks heavy or less refined. But this shape didn't evolve to meet modern beauty standards. It exists because it once served a very specific purpose. A round, prominent nose creates a larger surface area at the nasal tip. This allows incoming air to be warmed and humidified more effectively before it reaches the lungs. In cold or dry environments, where air can irritate and dry out the respiratory tract, this processing becomes especially important. The thicker skin and dense connective tissue around the nasal tip also act as natural insulation. They help retain heat and protect the underlying cartilage from cold wind and low humidity. You can think of a round nose as a built-in buffer, not only conditioning the air, but shielding sensitive internal structures as well. Socially, this nose type is often associated with warmth and a strong personality, but biologically, it reflects a design focused on durability and tolerance. Not flashy, not minimal, simply committed to keeping every breath safe and stable under demanding conditions. Roman nose, controlling airflow. If your nose has a high, extended bridge that sometimes curves slightly downward, you may have been told it looks stern or rigid. But social perception is only the surface. Beneath it lies a structure designed to control airflow with clear intent. A Roman nose has a longer nasal cavity, meaning air doesn't rush straight into the lungs. Instead, it slows down, gradually warming and humidifying as it travels through the nasal passage. This reduces irritation to the respiratory lining and is especially useful in environments with cold wind, dry air, or frequent temperature shifts. You can think of a Roman nose as a natural climate control chamber. Air isn't just taken in, it's processed before the body has to deal with it. As a result, breathing becomes more stable, and the lungs are less exposed to sudden thermal shock from the outside. Structurally, a high nasal bridge also helps distribute impact forces better than flatter nose types. It's a simple but effective form of mechanical protection. Socially, the Roman nose is often associated with leadership and confidence, but biologically, its core value lies in control, stability, and long-term adaptability. Greek nose, balanced airflow. If your nasal bridge is straight, forming a continuous line from the forehead to the tip. You've probably heard it described as ideal or classically beautiful. But this shape doesn't exist for aesthetics alone. It exists because it works. A Greek nose creates a straight, smooth airway. Incoming air experiences less collision, less turbulence, and less disruption. That leads to a breathing flow that's steady, even, and comfortable, even as temperature or humidity changes. The body doesn't need to constantly adjust with each breath. The straight structure also helps distribute air pressure evenly within the nasal cavity, reducing the risk of dryness or irritation of the nasal lining. You can think of it like a straight highway, where air moves smoothly instead of being forced to constantly change direction. Historically, this nose type has been celebrated in art and sculpture, associated with balance and discipline. But biologically, its core value lies in stability. It isn't optimized for any single extreme environment, but it performs well across many conditions. Not remarkable for standing out, remarkable for keeping every breath smooth and balanced. Hooked nose, a natural air filter. If your nasal bridge is pronounced and curves slightly forward, you may have been told this nose looks sharp or even intimidating. In many cases, it gets tied to assumptions about personality rather than being seen as a biological structure. But this shape didn't evolve just to leave a visual impression. A hooked nose creates a longer, curved nasal passage that forces incoming air to slow down before reaching the lungs. When airflow is slowed, nasal hairs and mucous membranes have more time to trap dust, sand, and fine particles. You can think of it as a coarse air filter, working quietly every time you breathe. This mechanism is especially useful in environments with heavy dust, strong winds, or highly variable climates. Instead of allowing dry or dirty air to rush straight into the respiratory system, the hooked nose softens and processes it first. That reduces irritation and helps keep breathing steady over long periods. Socially, a hooked nose is often associated with strength or seriousness. But biologically, its true value lies in protection. Not flashy, not gentle. Simply focused on one clear mission: keeping the air you breathe cleaner and safer. Rounded, upturned nose. Fast and protected. If your nose is short, with a slightly indented bridge and a rounded tip, you may have been told it looks childlike or overly gentle. It's often viewed as an emotional or aesthetic trait rather than a functional one. But this structure is anything but accidental. A rounded, upturned nose has a short nasal cavity, allowing air to enter quickly with minimal resistance. This helps the body maintain a steady oxygen supply, especially during physical activity or moments that require rapid response. Breathing isn't slowed down unnecessarily, and respiratory rate can increase without feeling heavy or strained. Because the nose doesn't project forward, the cartilage is better protected from impact and sudden temperature changes. Less direct exposure to cold wind also reduces the risk of dryness and irritation. You can think of a rounded, upturned nose as a compact entryway. Air moves straight in without having to pass through too many obstacles. Socially, this nose type is often perceived as friendly and approachable, but biologically, it reflects a priority for speed and safety. Not elaborate, not complex. Simply focused on helping you breathe quickly, smoothly, and stay ready as your body moves. When you look back at all these nose shapes, one thing becomes very clear. None of them exist just to decorate the face. Every curve, every height, every width is the result of the body adapting to a specific environment in the past. The nose you carry today is a trace of the climate your ancestors once breathed in. Cold air, heat, dryness, and humidity each left their own imprint on that structure. Over time, the shapes that worked better helped people breathe more easily, live longer, and pass those traits on to the next generation. So what sometimes gets labeled as a flaw is actually a biological record. Your body remembers where it once lived and how it survived. Not every feature was designed for the modern world, but every one of them once served a clear purpose. When you understand that, the way you see yourself begins to shift. It's no longer about comparison. It's about fit. Every nose is a solution, evolution's answer to different conditions. Not random, not a mistake, but a living memory of survival.